Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to you. When we talk about mythology, we'll have to understand some things about India. It's got 1,600 languages. Each language has its own culture. Each culture has its own lore. And each lore has millions of stories in it. And these stories form the backbone of India's history, India's culture as a whole. When we look at the epics and we look at the mythology that we have inherited from the country, we'll have to understand them from the perspective of what they were and what they mean today, and what impact they will have on society going forward. As authors, we don't have judgment. We don't draw conclusions. We don't tell our audience what to think. We just provide perspectives. We provide intentions. We provide ideas and interpretations of what the lore depicts. And today's session is going to be yet another example of that. I have a wonderful panel with me today. To start with, we have Arshia Sattar. Arshia is a very big and a very important figure in depicting the epic of Ramayana. I mean, she's been involved with that one particular epic for almost 30 years of her life. Her book of essays on the Ramayana, Lost Loves, exploring Rama's anguish, was shortlisted for the Crossword Non-Fiction Award in 2012. Penguin will publish Uttara, the Book of Answers, a translation of essays on Valmiki's Uttarkhand, later this year. She also has a Ramayana for young adults due in 2016. Arshia co-founded and runs the Sangam House International Writers Residency Program, located outside Bangalore, or Bengaluru. She writes books for various publications and teaches courses in classical Indian literature at different institutions in India and abroad. Our next panelist is Kavita Kane, a senior journalist with a career of over 2 decades, which includes working for Magna Publication and DNA. She quit her job as assistant editor of Times of India to devote herself as a full-time author, a self-styled aficionado of cinema and theatre. Karna's Wife was her debut novel in 2013, an immediate bestseller. The second novel, Sita's Sister, in 2014, also deals with another enigmatic personality, Urmila, Sita's sister, and Lakshman's wife. Her third book, another bestseller, Menaka's Choice, is again on Menaka, the famous Apsara, the seductress, the symbol of beauty and female sexual power, who fell in love with a man she was meant to destroy. Her forthcoming book, Lanka's Princess, will be out this December, and as the title goes, it is on Surpanaka, Ravana's sister, the girl who started it all. She's born in Mumbai and has a childhood largely spent in Patna and Delhi. She lives in Pune. Our third panelist is Anuja Chandramouli. She's a best-selling Indian author and New Age Indian classicist. Her highly acclaimed debut novel was Arjuna, saga of a Pandava warrior prince. The god of desire and Shakti, the divine feminine, are her other bestsellers. Her new book, an epic fantasy called Yama's Lieutenant, has received an overwhelming response. An accomplished orator, she regularly conducts workshops on creative writing, storytelling, and mythology. Her work with youngsters in the rural belt helped them improve their spoken English and writing skills has been wonderfully satisfying and enriching for her. She's a student of classical dance and yoga. Currently, she's hard at work on an awesome new adventure with Yama's Lieutenant. The fourth author we have here is Suhail Mathur, a good friend. He's a best-selling author of the historical mythological fiction The Bhairav Putras and is one of India's premier literary agents via his agency, The Book Bakers, also my agent. A Litfest regular, Suhail has worked with major TV production houses on matters of story, screenplay, dialogue, and songs, apart from acting as an English cricket commentator for Star Sports and Airtel's Mobile. His name has been listed as one of the top 51 Indian writers to follow by eBooks India. His forthcoming book, The Hunt for Rama's Bow, Adventure 1 of the Vishnu Chronicles, is slated to release in September by Om Books International. So here are my panelists, and I invite them onto the stage. So let's start the session with a tough question. But before this question, I'd like to say this, that if you even take Ramayana as an epic, which it is, there are some instances in Ramayana where we kind of, in today's world, question how it is and how it should be interpreted. One of this is about Sita. She had to walk the path of fire to prove her chastity after she was rescued from Ravan's Lanka. And even after that, she was sent away to a forest while she was pregnant. All of it just so Ram's image is clean in the public eye. In today's world, you have women chased out of their marital homes and cheated of their ancestral properties, so men could have a good life. They are persecuted in the name of dowry and used as slaves. Is the treatment of the modern Sita a reflection of the perception of women in our epics? The question is to you.
Is this working? Yeah, that's a difficult question. I mean, in a sense, it has a very simple answer, but it's an answer that we don't feel comfortable giving in the times in which we live, or at least I don't feel comfortable giving a really obvious answer, which is, yeah, it is deeply, deeply problematic. But I will also say, and this is a really cheap thing to do, so let me just do it and get it out of the way. My new book that comes out in November deals with this, so buy the book and you'll have the answer. I don't want to specifically talk about Rama necessarily. I think it's a very good starting point for the question. But one of the things that has concerned me over the last few years is the kind of violence that is perpetrated on women in both the epics. The most obvious ones, of course, being Draupadi's Vastraharana, Sita's Agni Pariksha, her banishment into the forest after. And I think, the hundreds of other incidents in the big stories, in the small stories. If you think of Madhvi in Mahabharata, whose husband marries her off to various kings serially because she has the capacity to produce male children. And every time she produces a male child, her husband gets 400 white horses that he has to give as Guru Dakshina to his teacher. So I think there's a kind of misogyny built into the stories that we've grown up with. I think that's something that we need to acknowledge. And I think that, and now the sort of, the trendy thing to say is like, women, why don't you bring up your sons better? Well, a lot of it has got to do with the kinds of stories that we tell them. So perhaps we need to think about these stories. You're clapping for me. Tomorrow they'll come to take my head, but I'll remember that you clapped. Thank you.
So, when you're writing mythology, it's not like especially mythology-based fiction, it's not easy because there's a terrific amount of groundwork that needs to be done for about the characters, about the storyline, about your interpretation of it without really losing track of the main basic premise that goes behind that piece of mythology. So basically, Kavita, what kind of factors do you keep in mind while selecting a mythological character for your books? Considering the fact that Kavita's books are all about supporting characters in epics whom she takes up and she builds a story around them and their own power. So I think you're the right person to answer this question.
Actually, I don't think I plan so much. It's very instinctive, and I think I am drawn to the women characters because I think women are more interesting than men. Of course, a very gender-biased answer, but it's a fact because being a woman writer, I think I find it easier. Karna's wife, I think the whole idea, the concept started because in the collective mind, Karna is sort of seen as a bachelor. So the first reaction was, oh, Karna have a wife? And I was not interested in telling his story. Everyone knows his story. It was seeing his story through his wife's eyes. How did she suffer his life? I wanted her as a narrator of his story, like a sutradhar. Even his conscience, when you have, he's shown this, he is a typical tragic hero. And he has his moral dilemma, he's a torn man. And how he faces it through his wife. In the sense, I think all his conflicts, whether they are moral conflicts or actual conflicts of existence, is sort of relayed through his wife. Because I definitely did not want a male perspective to this. Urmila, of course, I think she is, I think, one of the most, not only the most sideline characters, I think she's one of the most intriguing characters, especially vis-a-vis Sita. Both actually face the same dilemma, and how each one faces it. But we know Sita's story, we do not know her story. And I wanted to remove her from the shadow of being Sita's sister and being Lakshman's wife. She was more importantly Janak's daughter. I wanted to show her as Janki. She is the daughter of a philosopher king who was an extremely evolved man. And definitely being the daughter of such a man, who I think he was the first feminist in our mythology, really, honestly. I mean, the way he brought up his daughters, he never ever aspired to have a daughter, in spite of Dasharath had his yagna. The Janak is one of the few kings who not even allowed, he sort of encouraged her. When he had these philosophical conferences, he encouraged women to join him. I mean, his most important one is Gargi and Subala. So, I mean, such a man, being a father of, I mean, he would bring up his daughter in a certain way. I think I was very interested in that. So, Sita's sister is more on how, it's a more a father-daughter relationship, and how she is the glue for all the four sisters. Because we know Sita as Ram, she goes to exile. What happens in the palace once they are alone? There are three queens and these three girls. So what happened? There is no man except for Shatrughan. So I was intrigued with that. The third, of course, is Menka. When you talk about Menka, it's like we always think she's that Apsara who comes, sort of a fleeting experience, who comes and goes, seduces the sage and goes off. So what was she? I mean, you see her as she's the ultimate sex symbol, if you say, she or whether it's Menka or whether it's Urvashi. So, and she abandoned her daughter twice. It's not only Shakuntala, she had abandoned her previous daughter also. So being a mother, if you can call it a heartless mother, you immediately tag them. She becomes a heartless mother. But why don't you question the role of the father here? It was also that. So these sort of questions. Or when she's told to do these tasks by Indra, is she doing it willingly or is she doing it? So this whole concept of, I wouldn't call it extreme word like sex slavery, but definitely where sex is used as a weapon and it becomes part of a personality. And the same, now the fourth character is Surpanaka, which she is always a contrast to Sita. When we have, I think coming back to your first question, we have deified Ram and Sita, that whole thing, they become symbols of perfection, they're the epitome of perfection in whatever, self-sacrifice, duty. And Surpanaka is the utter contrast, where she is bold and beautiful is not the word, the whole thing was, she was beautiful, but the whole thing was, because of her nature, she's shown ugly. So I was intrigued again with Surpanaka, essentially because she was a contrast to Sita. So that's how the character actually.
Just to add to that, Vadhan, I think, if you look at India's mythology and India's history, both are very vast. We have 33 crore gods and goddesses. And as far as our history is concerned, we have the civilizations, and then, the Hindu rulers, and then the Mughals coming in, and the Britishers. So it's a vast, dimension and framework for a writer, which is a great thing because you get those many more characters and those many more stories to write on. At the same time, it can be a problem of plenty as well. So to choose which character you should pick from out of all of these and do justice to. So, as you mentioned, that the characters that Kavita basically writes about are those who probably have not got their due, as much as they should have.
Because the moment the spotlight changes, the entire narrative changes.
Correct.
I mean, Ramayana, it is the story of Ramayana. I mean, this whole thing is a praise of poem on Ram. It's not even Sita's story.
I have a question on that as well. We'll come to that later.
Yeah.
And I'll probably put that to you.
So what I was saying was that, when you take a character who's supporting, a supportive character and has not really been given their due, it becomes that much more easy for the author to weave a story, because you will bring out facets that are unknown to the reader. So that is an advantage in comparison to a normal retelling. So when I wrote the Bhairav Putras, why I chose Lord Bhairav was because, so firstly I wanted to use a dark god, in my title, and I also worship the child form of Lord Bhairav, that's Batuk Bhairav. So I got him in because people do not know much about him, and there are a lot of misconceptions. So, I could play with that in the storyline, which probably I may not have been able to do, if the characters were, say, Ram or Krishna, in the context that I've used mythology and mingled it with history. So that is one thing that, definitely helps. A problem that probably an author can face while taking a supporting character is, and we need to laud our authors for actually showing this courage and stepping forth, is that if the character is not known to people, there are chances that the readers may not buy the book, right? Because it doesn't strike a chord with the reader. But I'm happy that authors have taken that leap of faith, and the readers on their part too have wholeheartedly accepted it. So it is a good thing, and I still feel that there are lots and lots of other characters, both in India's history as well as mythology, who need to come out to the fore. And I'm sure in the times to come we'll see that as well.
Sure. And that's something to look forward to as well.
Correct.
Yeah. So, how true, actually, taking thing from you, how true do you have to be to the characters that are part of mythology when you're writing about them? How true do you have to be? You've written Arjuna, the Kaurava warrior prince. So when you wrote that, taking that as an example, how true would you be to the character of Arjuna, or any?
No, with Arjuna, he's someone I've loved all my life, and I'm stressing that because I'm very fickle in my head, So if I like a sports star 1 minute, if he has a couple of bad showings, I may tear him down from the pedestal and dash him to the ground. I'm that sort of fan.
Oh, she had a fight with me because I think she took it so personally. Oh, you have written about Karna, I have written about Arjuna. So
yes, I'm like that. I'm mad about Arjuna, and I really get bugged when people say, Karna was the nice guy, blah blah.
I think the only person who can pacify the two of you is Rakhi when she says, "Mere Karan Arjun aayenge."
So I love Arjuna, and I felt, I felt his perfection. So I felt I didn't have to really mess around with that character or reinterpret or retell or anything, because Vedavyasa, again, he's a great favorite of mine, and I didn't want to improve on perfection. But my other books, Kamadeva, Shakti, I think there it was more about recreation and reinterpretation, because at the end of the day, if I don't agree with something, I love the Puranic lore out there. I love that stuff. I'm passionate about it, and I respect the material a lot. But that said, if I don't go with something, if I don't agree with something that's there, I will say it my way. I will go with what makes sense to me. So I feel in that case, it's fine. It's because I'm not writing stuff to shock people or create controversies, although that's also not a bad idea. You make headlines that translates into sales, but I'm really like, I'm not brilliant enough to think, be that analytical and all. I just go with the flow, and whatever feels right to me, what works for me, I just put that down.
So you say that Arjuna is perfection. Great. So was the Guru Dakshina that he gave Drona finally?
What's perfect about him is that he's not perfect. He has these cute little flaws and foibles, you know. Perfection can be very annoying at times. It's hard to live up to. So what I love about not just Arjuna, but it applies for all the characters in the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. They have shades of grey, you know. They are like us. None of us are, you know, perfect and ideal. So I love that about Arjuna. When he was young, he was brash and reckless and ruthless. I actually find that ruthlessness about him a little hot. You know, he goes after what he wants. So he's masterful that way, and who can resist a guy like that? And over the years, he got his act together. You know, before the battle, he hesitated. He had the power to take all those lives, and it wasn't an easy decision for him, because by then he'd grown up. So, you know, that's what I said. He's awesome.
Right. So actually he's imperfect, but for her, it's I am perfect. But coming to the point that you raised, if I may just add, sure. You know, mythology is something that is derived from the word myth, which in any case means that, you know, the origins are not known whether it's completely true or not. So when you're doing a mythological fiction, and you know, these days in our literature, we've got subcategories of how you want to approach mythology. You want to do mythological fiction, you want to do a mythological fantasy, or you want to blend history and mythology together. So if you're doing that, you know, you can definitely have a lot of chances to play with the script, right? It's history per se when you're looking at history, when you need to adhere to facts, because you know, those are records that are there on the ground, and you can't change them. So when you see television serials which show, you know, this show that comes, Chakravartin, Ashok Samrat, they had a character who looked like Khal Drogo from the Game of Thrones. I mean, how did he come into Ashoka? Or you know, the other show, Maharana Pratap, had a teenage Maharana Pratap and a teenage Akbar roaming arm in arm in a Rajasthani fair. So how is that even remotely possible? I mean, Akbar was already the king when he was a teenager, you know. So those are the kind of things that we need to look into. As far as mythology is concerned, what's happening is that, you know, and I'll give an example from TV, since I was working with a production house. So the show comes on Sony, Suryaputra Karn. And, you know, of course, that statement is very infamous where Karn calls Draupadi a Vaishya, you know, during the Vastrahan scene. So they were telling me, so we were having a discussion, and he said that, you know, मेरे को दिखाना है कि उसने बोला है, ये सब जानते हैं, मैं कैसे दिखाऊंगा वो अलग है. So if you see in the earlier Mahabharat, the B.R. Chopra's Mahabharat, Karn sitting and he says ऐसी औरत को तो वैश्या कहते हैं. That's how they show it. In the new one, it's Duryodhan, he's standing and he's like, बोलो मित्र बोलो, ऐसी औरत को क्या कहते हैं? And he's quiet. बोलो, नहीं, नहीं बोल सकता, बोलो तुम्हें मेरी दोस्ती की सौगंध, वैश्या कहते हैं. So it happens like that. So that's, you know, the difference as to how the TV producers are now interpreting it. So that's the difference.
Well, that was a nice one, man. I mean,
I think you can be an actor also, I think so.
Thank you.
He's multifaceted. I mean, he's also a lyricist, he's a songwriter, he's a singer. So coming back to some serious questions. I don't know if I'll get a serious answer, but a serious question, and I want a serious answer for this, is basically again going back to Ramayana. And I'm going to be the devil's advocate here. Ram sacrificed his wife for his image more than once, just so his subjects felt that the king can do no wrong. In that sense, would you perceive him as righteous, self-righteous, self-centered, or is there a deeper justification for his conduct? Yes. No, because she's the most capable of answering a question like that.
I shall take that as a compliment.
It is a compliment.
Thank you, sir. Is he what? Righteous, self-centered?
Or is there a deeper justification for his conduct?
Well, again, I'm really sorry to do this, but you have to read my last book, which actually talks about how Rama negotiates dharma. And the difference for me between Ramayana and Mahabharata has always been that in Mahabharata, people don't know what is right. In Ramayana, they know what is right. Rama knows what is right. He does it, and it still goes horribly wrong. So he never, he doesn't start out to be a bad guy. He wants to do the right thing. He wants to do the right thing by his father, by his brothers, by his wife. Yes, he does give up his wife more than once, twice, as you say, so that he looks good. I'm not sure that I would put it quite like that. I think that he is really thinking about what happened to his father. Dasharatha was a great and wise and just king, but we don't remember anything about him except that he sent his son into exile because he loved his wife more, right? So at that moment, Dasharatha puts his dharma as a husband first, over his dharma as a father, and certainly over his dharma as a king. So Dasharatha acknowledges his private dharma in that moment, and that fact haunts Rama forever. So when it comes to his turn, he says, I'm not going to make the same mistake. I'm going to do the publicly right thing. I'm going to support my public dharma, however horrible it seems to me as a husband, and however much it hurts my wife. So I don't think he's self-centered. I don't think he's self-righteous. I think, in fact, I think the title of Gurcharan Das's book, which is about the Mahabharata, the difficulty of being good, I think that actually applies to Rama much more. And I think that's why he is the Maryada Purushottama. Not because he's never wrong, but because he tries to always be right. And that's a very difficult thing to have to
See, exactly,
to do.
because the Purushottam is the goal here. You always say Ram is the Purushottam, but you forget the Maryada word. He's always known as Maryada Purushottam. I think the fault in seeing Ram is us, because we have idolized him, we have deified him. And I think when Valmiki wrote the character of Ram, it was a character. I mean, what I'm trying to say is he had his flaws. I think, since we have made him God, we do not want to accept those flaws. As she says, he was haunted by what his father did. And every time the choice came between throne and his wife, he always chose the throne. Because he wanted the concept of the perfect kingdom, the perfect Ram Rajya. The whole thing was, Ram Rajya was more important for him than Sita. You think he did not know that just listening to a washerman, a dhobi saying something, of course he knew. He knew he was wrong. It's not question. He knew that the thing was realizing the wrong through the goodness. And the choice is that he always chose his throne because his father had.
So he was more of Raja Ram than Sita Ram.
No, not at all. Because I think Sita, if you say, even the Agni Pariksha was not done by Ram. It was Sita who demanded it. So Sita is not some subdued character which we think her to be. The whole concept of Sita as a demure character is something I definitely do not agree. Because every time, even when she wants to go to the forest, she argues with him. There is always, it is never that.
Isn't that the least you can expect? Go to the forest. Okay.
Because it was not easy going to the forest, because the whole
the least you
concept.
can expect
It is morally wrong. The princess never went to the forest. The thing that she had to argue with her husband on that, and he had to agree. It is not that Ram wanted to take her to the forest. Because she argued on that.
There's one part in Valmiki Ramayana when she says, "You're really going to leave me here with my mother-in-law for 14 years? No."
Yes.
And that's the part that we don't hear.
Because I think we see Sita in such a, I think that's what, we see Ram like the perfect virtuous person, and Sita as the epitome of sacrifice. I don't think they were like that I don't think Valmiki really created them as like that. And secondly, I think in the end it's mythology. If you think it is mythology, we are supposed to not think not only thing, we are not supposed to judge. We are supposed to learn from their mistakes. If Ram made mistakes, we are not supposed to do that. Or if Sita made a mistake, we are supposed to realize from those mistakes. So that, reading between the lines is more important in mythology than just taking it. Yes.
No, I agree with what both of them said, and I just want to add a little bit to that. Your first question, the difficult one which you saved for Asha, you said that, that set a precedent, what happened to Sita, right? You said that women still get cheated out of their ancestral properties and are used as slaves so that men can be happy. I kind of disagree with that, because I don't think at any point in history women have been victims. I don't see myself as a victim. I don't think there's any woman out there who wants to feel like, oh no, it's horrible to be born this way, it's a life of suffering. I don't think so. Women are tough. They are tougher than men. They are the deadlier of the two, right? The female of the species.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
But the fact...
Yeah, men should be quaking in their shoes.
But the fact of the matter is that whether whether they are...
And Vadhan's wife is laughing.
They have to be tougher, given the fact that they are put in such a situation all their life. They have
kind
to
of
fight
situation
harder.
is that?
They
Would
have to fight harder. They have to work harder. They have to do things a lot more harder than men.
I disagree. I don't think it's like that. I don't think life is cakewalk if you're a man. I don't think so.
No, it's not.
Because it isn't. See, it isn't. It's hard for a guy and it's a girl, and you can go around saying, oh
But
no,
it's
life
harder.
is hard, or you can take control of your life. I don't think it's...
I think each of them was strong. I mean, when they say Draupadi is strong, I think Satyavati was strong. I think Madhavi was strong. I mean, given the scenario, given the situation, each one fought back, and they did it with such dignity. And I think in their own way, they lived life on their own terms. I think
the
that was more important.
toughest of them all, of course, is Draupadi.
Definitely.
Again, Draupadi has become, everyone sees her as this victim and this entire symbol of revenge. I mean, there are a lot of other women characters. You see her Kunti. What is Kunti? I mean, she fought for her sons right till the end. But she was equally, completely dispassionate about Karna. So, I mean, you see two sides of motherhood there. So, I think each woman character in mythology is strong. So.
All right.
Yes.
Right. So, like I said, damn good discussion there. It's a very good discussion. So, moving forward, Suhail, what kind of research do authors do for mythological fiction? What kind of detailing do they go to? What is the depth of their research? How much of their time do they actually spend on research? And how much of it goes into actually writing the book?
Right. So see, as I said earlier, that you have a certain leeway as far as mythology is concerned in comparison to history. So, when I was writing The Bhairav Putras, which is predominantly a historical book with a dash of mythology in it, you have to stick to the facts and weave a story around it. So if the Quit India movement is happening in a certain year, it has to happen in that particular year, on that particular date, and your story needs to move forth. But in mythology, you can shift it slightly as per your imagination, right? So those are the kind of things. Having said that, research is something, I would term, if I was writing a book on science and I was reading up, that would be research. Why I don't term the kind of books that I write and what I write as research is because I actually like reading that. So over a period of time, I have read that, I remember that, and it was actually knowledge more than research. Because the moment you probably use the term research, it becomes slightly more academic. But so this was fun for me. And but having said that, there has to be a certain background as far as mythology is concerned. So I'll give you an example that for my forthcoming book, The Hunt for Rama's Bow, it has a lot of trivia. So for example, people generally believe that Ravan was from Lanka and Ram was from Ayodhya. But the truth is that Ram, forget being from different countries, Ram and Ravan were from the same state. So Ram was from Ayodhya, which is in UP, and Ravan was from a village called Bisrak, which takes the name from his father Vishrava. And that is a place not very far from where the two of us live, that's Greater Noida. So, so that's research, and that's interesting trivia. At the same time, I happened to read a book which was a mythological fantasy. The first line of the book was 326 BC, Lord Ram and Ravan were engaged in battle. 326 BC. That was the time Chandragupta Maurya was there. you know. So that is not only bad writing, that is also bad editing on the editor's part. And this happens when, you know, you want to write about a particular genre, but you're not very comfortable about it. Similarly, as a literary agent, we get a lot of scripts. And there, I got a script where, you know, someone had written on Kalki. And the first line of it was, Kalki, the ninth avatar of Lord Vishnu. So the moment you do that, the publisher is not going to look ahead, and you can't make such a colossal blunder. It can be an oversight at some places, but you know, the research needs to be there to a certain extent.
I want to comment on your 326 BC and that, you know, Chandragupta and Alexander and all of that was happening. It's very, very likely that the Valmiki Ramayana was composed sometime between 500 BCE and 200 BCE. So somebody who knew that might say that Rama and Ravana were fighting in 326 BC. It doesn't make it true. Right, but it makes it possible given what we know about the period of the composition of the text that we call the Valmiki Ramayana. So I just want to bring that, you know, it's not wrong to say that. It's
but
one
probably
way.
If you read the book, you'll realize that the author did not have any such.
I'm sure that, well, you know, don't be so sure that people don't do enough research. A lot of people do a lot of research. It comes out funny, but it doesn't mean they didn't do the work.
For example, if you take a very obscure sect in the south of India called the Ayyavari. They have come out with their own scriptures and their own literature in which they say that Vishnu did not have 10 avatars, he had only 6 avatars. And he is known as the Ayya, father. And they say that these 6 avatars was to defeat a supreme evil, which came out in each avatar in different forms, and that was Vishnu's thing. And then the entire 10 avatars of Vishnu itself is wrong. So if somebody were to write a book based on that, then that doesn't really become. I think basically it's about the kind of research you do. It's about the kind of approach you give, and the kind of the way you design your book so that it fits into the story, and how you are able to bring out that research as a validated research.
Correct, but you mentioned your source, right? So I'm talking purely as a literary agent here. And so, you know, if I was to send out a book where the source wasn't mentioned, the publisher would come back to me and say that, what have you sent across? So those are things that one needs to see. If you've mentioned the source, that's fine. And if you could just let us know which are the 4 that they have not included in the 6.
One must be Buddha.
The 10.
Basically, he comes out as the Matsya, okay, the original one, and then the amphibian, which is the tortoise, and then the boar, Kurma.
The initial ones.
The initial ones.
They are the ones actually that is supposed to be a symbol of how evolution was formed.
So there are the Krishna, Rama, and then you have Kalki. So you don't have Buddha, you don't have Parshuram, you don't have Balram. Some of these are included as.
Balram is not a.
You know, in some Dashavatars you see Balram as part of it,
some it is,
and some you don't see him, and then they've omitted all this, and there's only 6. And this is an 18th century, I think, sect which came up in the 18th century, and they came out with this. It's called the Ayyavari. And in each of these, there's this supreme villain which comes in. For example, in Mahabharata, it's Duryodhan. In Ramayana, it's a Ravan, of course, and for Narsimha, it is Hiranyakashipu. So these are the avatars of the supreme evil that take birth, and in the current thing is Kalki, who comes out.
Which of course stems from the Jai Vijay story and the curse that they had to take 3 births.
7 or 3.
Yeah. 3 as
7 or 3, they choose 3.
Yeah,
as enemies of Vishnu.
Correct.
This is one of my favorite things about discussing Hindu mythology. Everybody has their own story, and that is what is so important and so wonderful about Hindu mythology, that there is no single story. So your guy with the 6 avatars and your guy with the 24 or whatever it is, it doesn't matter, and what we're living through.
Exactly.
Just a minute. What we're living through now is this desire to make a single story out of Hinduism, yeah? And we're denying the diversity that really makes it one of the richest traditions in the world, and that to me is really, really sad. So this is fantastic. 6, 7, 25, kuch bhi bolo. So long as you have a story to back it up, you're fine.
But the thing is, the bottom line is that you treat it not just as a parable, and you learn from that, because each one, whether it's 10 avatars, 6 avatars, 24 avatars, as she said, there is a story behind it. And my mythology is not just a stringing of stories. We are supposed to learn something from the story. I think that is where we are missing the point completely.
No, and to add to that, I think that I get asked that question a lot. People ask me how much of it is true, what you've written, and I think that's a very slippery slope to be on, because I don't look at it as true or false, because there's no way of knowing for sure. I mean, even this panel, what we're talking right
That's
now,
what is
do you
mythology.
think anyone can say accurately what each of us said? Tomorrow, if you ask, just after the session, everyone will have their version of it based on, who they thought was good, who looked nice, who was dressed well. You never know the factors that go into a retelling. So I feel it's irrelevant. You can learn something from it if you want. If you don't want, don't learn from it. Just get entertained, laugh at it, hate it, love it. It's entirely what you take from it. I think that's what's beautiful, that you have a relationship with the material, and it's not the same. It varies from person to person, and that's beautiful, and it's fine. So we can't say, oh no, she subverted something beautiful. It's ridiculous when you think like that.
So you're absolutely right. That's a fantastic way of putting it forth. And Suhail, coming back to what you had said about the 3 versus the 7 of Ajay and Vijaya, this is the Ayyavari has nothing to do with it. They don't really go by that. No. They go by a completely different route. Right. So, yeah, like we all agree here when we say that whatever the story, whatever the source of the story, as long as you're able to understand that it is not one single parable, and it is actually a conglomeration of everything. Hinduism is a fantastic.
But I was fortunately saved with all this entire dilemma, because all my characters were sideline characters. They were all minor characters. So I had, actually when I started off with Urmila, that was supposed to be my first book. And when I did all the research, as he said, there was absolutely nothing about her. It's just a 2-line mention. And making a book, an entire story revolving around her was, yes, I was sort of balancing fact and fiction here. But that fiction has to be very believable fiction. You cannot be something so outlandish that it is not, like I derive an Urmila from the character of Sita or a Janak or a Lakshman. That is how I derive my small character. Or even with Menka, Vishwamitra is a huge character in mythology, in both Mahabharata and Ramayana. But there's nothing about Menka. Menka is only there for the creation of Shakuntala. And of course, the downfall of that man. So again, writing an entire 300-page story on her, or on Surpanaka, like, okay, she's not a sideline character, she's there, but no one knows about her. What do you know about Surpanaka besides she was Ravan's sister, her nose got cut off, and what happened to her after that?
For no apparent.
And she was the one who actually started the war.
Nobody knows anything else about her.
Okay. So
You'll
going
have to
forward.
buy Kavita's book for that.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll say what you say. Read my book.
So going forward, Maryada Purushottam, Ram, great. So I have a small little tale here. Indrajit is Ravan's son, invincible warrior, unbeatable in his time. He can take on the 12 Maharathis of Indian literature in a single battle and defeat them. And Rama was only one of those Maharathis. He actually defeats Ram. They had to go and bring the Sanjeevani herb to revive him again. Sorry, Lakshmana, sorry. Yeah, sorry. And ultimately what happens here is that there is a prophecy which says that he can be defeated by a man who hasn't been in feminine company for 14 years. And and he should not battle with that man. Now, he battles with that one particular man and he is defeated. And that one man who hasn't had feminine companionship for 14 years is Lakshman. Now take a look at Lakshman. His background is that if Rama left for the forest, he could have been the natural heir. He leaves his kingdom, he leaves his wife, all for a principle, and goes after his brother. He even gets blamed for his sister-in-law's kidnapping because he left her side. He fights hard, he almost gives up his life. And yet, he is a supporting character. Why not Maryada Purushottam Lakshman? Why only Ram? Anybody?
I think all these things boil down to perspective. You take a microscope and you try to find fault with Lakshman, you're going to. We were talking about Surpanaka's chopped off nose, no? Lakshman did that.
Yes.
Don't you think he went a little too far? A little too far? He overreacted, wouldn't you say, when he chopped off her nose? So
don't know.
he's a
We don't know what his
powerful warrior
frustrations
who's
were.
capable of defeating a Maharati. He goes and chops off that poor girl's nose because she was desperate.
That again is supposed to be extremely symbolic, because Surpanaka is supposed to be, that whole thing out here is, if you're overtly sexual, is it, are you
You
a
get
venom?
things
Are you
chopped
no,
off.
the whole thing is, if you're overtly sexual, are you a bitch? That is exactly what they're trying to ask you.
There's also a version, of course, in which he chops off her breasts.
Her
which
breasts,
is,
yes.
That is.
People's breasts get lopped off a lot in
Yeah.
Indian
In your
mythology.
South India.
Yes.
I am from there.
Well, yours too.
So,
Mine too, actually. I live there.
So, Rama killed Vali that way, I mean, from
That's what
behind.
I
So,
said. I
see,
think no guy is
but basically,
perfect here, no?
why is it that, in my opinion, again, like you say, it's perspective, and we are only giving perspectives here, we are not really providing conclusions. So, in my opinion, wouldn't you say that the sacrifice, Lakshman's sacrifice and his character was far greater than that of his brother?
No, it wasn't. See, again, you said that, he chose principle and he took off with his brother. If I were his wife, I would have been bloody mad at him. I'll say, what an idiot. All he cares about is his dumb brother and his dumb brother's wife. He should be here looking after me and my son, right?
As she said, please read my book. So,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But also, apart from Kavita's book, which everybody should read for all of these reasons, and which I enjoyed very much, Urmila is actually somebody who captures the imagination of quite a wide spectrum of people, unexpected people. There's a Malayalam playwright in the 1960s called Srikantan Nair who takes the Urmila character and says exactly what when Lakshmana comes back, she says, "Why have you come back? I don't know who you are." And she says to Rama, "What did you do? What did you do to me?" And then, of course, she's in that tradition. There are two traditions. One is that Lakshmana says he will not sleep for 14 years. So his 14 years of sleep visit Urmila. So she's spent the 14 years asleep. But there's another tradition where, because she is so alone and because she is the daughter of a philosopher king, she studies the Shastras. So when Ram comes back and she says, "What Shastra were you reading? Who are you? How can you be a Maryada Purushottama? How can you be an upholder of Dharma?" Right? So she challenges him.
yeah, she was the
in
only
court.
one who actually asked him all these
Yeah,
questions.
you took my sister away, you took my husband away. What kind of good guy are you? So, yeah, so
So I think actually sometimes we have a very myopic view of seeing these characters. I think if we see them in a broader light, I think all of us are doing that. We are trying to show these characters and bringing them to light so that they have a version, they have a voice to talk.
And also, one of the things that I'm working on now is how epics grow. The lovely story that you just told about, Indrajit can only be killed by a man who hasn't slept with a woman or hasn't had female company for 14 years. Because somebody, somewhere in the 2,500 years that we've been telling this story, somebody is asking, "Arey, how come Indrajit was defeated by Lakshmana? Arey, what was Urvashi doing for like 14 years? A much simpler, Urmila. Urvashi is your other character, well, soon to be. And even within Valmiki Ramayana, people say, if Hanuman was so smart, how come Jambavan had to remind him who he was? And then there's a story in Valmiki that says, he was cursed, blah, blah. So the point that I'm trying to make is that we're not special in the 21st century. People have been asking these questions about these stories for as long as these stories have been told. And some of the questions and some of the answers get absorbed into the main narrative, and other questions and answers are presented at panels like this. So, in 2036, people are going to say, Hare, that Urmila, you know what she was doing? That Kavita Kane has told us, yeah? So that's how they grow, and that's why these stories are still with us and why we love them, because we're constantly retelling them to suit ourselves.
I mean, look, the point is this, that if you look from one perspective, which is the broader perspective, which you were basically talking about, so keeping the discussion focused on that. Yes, his dedication towards his brother is immense. And probably he is a character that probably today's youth might relate to more, because he gets angry at things people might, get angry at today, while Ram is the calmer one. And in fact, it's not only his life, but he also died, following his brother's diktats, and he fell to his death. So his is a life of complete devotion. And if you look at it from that aspect, it's something very good. Why I probably feel that Ram gets the more weightage is because, as we were talking about the Dash Avatar, Ram happens to be one of the avatars of Lord Vishnu. And because he's an avatar of Lord Vishnu, he gets more prominence. And that is how the Ramayana comes into play. So it's purely by quirk of fate and how the story has been written, focusing on one central character. But if you look at all the other characters who've played important roles, you'd find that they have heroic qualities as well. But, probably Kavita is there. She could probably do a Rama's brother also this time around, and we could know more about Lakshman.
No. I think in Sita's sister, actually, fleshing out Lakshman was more difficult than fleshing out Urmila, because you see him either as a devoted brother or a devoted brother-in-law. I mean, his entire sexual identity is sublimated. I mean, you don't see him as a lover, a husband, even a friend. So it's not only, when you see him as a brother, you're talking about a hero. If you decide, I think Moily has written that book on Ramayana. The entire thing is where Lakshman is the hero, and the Ramayana entirely changes, so it becomes Lakshmanayan. So the moment you want to decide to make Lakshman the hero, the entire story will change. So I think Ram is the hero, so might as well accept him.
Just throwing out a perspective. Yes, throwing out a perspective. Okay, going forward, we have great authors. We have authors writing great stories. We have great mythological fiction coming out, and I think that there also has come a point where we can say that there has been an abundance of mythological fiction in the market, overabundance. So in that perspective, what do you think, as authors and as researchers, and what do you think that the future is for mythological genre moving forward? What do you think?
I think mythology, it's always been there. We are talking, just because we are writing in English, I think you're asking me this question, because if it's vernacular literature, it's always been there. You see mythology in music, dance, drama, it's there. So I think we have always sort of got inspired from mythology. Now there's a new genre of authors, as you say, who are writing in English, and I think we are
interpreting.
Yes, we are revising, because when I say revising, we are not retelling. There are many people, because when you revise, it's like you are looking at a certain character or even the narrative through a different point of view. That's all, I think so. The stories remain the same. The stories are always interrelated. Yes. How you pick one story, what you want to make it as a plot and what you want to make as a subplot is up to the author. Same thing with the characters.
I think we are running out of time. I've just been given a stern warning with the gun. So I think I will thank the panelists for the great work they have done, and also mention this fact that my friend Suhail Mathur's book is coming out, The Hunt for Rama's Bow. It's part of the Vishnu Chronicles, and it's going to be the next bestseller.
Thanks so much. But I think as far as the next bestseller is concerned, I think that's going to come out this Sunday. And that's your book, which is being released by Ashwin Sanghi. So his book's coming out this Sunday. It's being released at PILF. It's called Agniputra. So all those people who want to, be present there, please be present, and it would be a great occasion for all of us to have you, over there with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you
thank you so much, panelists. It was a wonderful session. We enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.